Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Getting to the Bottom Line, where my goal is to help put into perspective different things that impact your revenue, profit, and cash flow. My name is Stephanie Smith. I am owner of New Light Financial Solutions, where we offer outsourced CFO services to help business owners generate more cash in their business. And what we do is basically every business is kind of like a machine that's made up of different parts, and we help identify what parts are working and not working so we can pull the levers to make the biggest impact in a business. So, all these episodes, I like to talk to different guests that could potentially be one of those levers or things that are impacting the bottom line. So, I'm really excited to have here with me today Roger Pearson. And for over 50 years, Roger has created, sold, or managed many small businesses. But in 2001, he switched course and began working as a master tax advisor slash IRS-enrolled agent. And in that time, he has watched hundreds of small business owners lose thousands of dollars needlessly. So he's made it his mission to provide entrepreneurs the knowledge to build a solid foundation under their business to keep more money in their pockets and give less to the government. That sounds right up my alley, Roger, for everything we've been talking about. So I just want to say welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, I thank you for inviting me.
I am thrilled to have this conversation. Why don't we start off by, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Well, I have over 50, being in my 70s, I have over 50 years of things I could talk about, but we probably don't have time for all of that. But, the things is, I've always been interested in business ever since I was a teenager. I had my paper route, and I've tried all kinds of things. I've started my own businesses. I had a landscaping business and landscape design business for a while. I decided I really didn't care for that. Number one, it was 100 degrees outside, and I didn't
Okay.
care mowing lawns at 100 degrees. And the landscape design, I love designing landscapes, but to do it commercially for other people, it meant I would have to go back and get an engineering degree too, because there's a lot of engineering when you get into landscaping, and people don't
Mm.
realize that. And I says, no, I don't want to go back to school. I've tried custodial businesses. That was not fun at all when people don't show up and you got to get out of bed and go take care of things. Um, and of course, I've tried all the MLMs and everything else. I've managed a lot of businesses. I've helped build divisions for businesses. Uh, so I've done a lot of things in life, and it's been quite a road. I originally was going to be a teacher. I
Wow.
went to when got out of high school and went to college. I was actually an education major, and until I did some student teaching and found out how this public schools actually work,
Mm.
and that it was back in the 70s. They had the new math where 2 + 2 = 5, and they threw out phonics and said that didn't work. Well, they found it did, but that was later on. I says I can't do this. I'd be fired every day. So I've been teaching in the corporate world, in the business world ever since instead. So I've done a lot of that too. And I've done some pretty good things out there, but essentially you get to the point where, well, what do you want to do? I actually the turnabout in my back in 2021 was kind of strange because I had just been downsized out of 3 management positions during the 90s. 90s were the decade of downsizing, where
Mm.
they were eliminating entire management levels in corporations. And it happened to me 3 times in 10 years. And I says, I don't know if I want to go back into managing in the corporate world anymore.
Can't blame you.
And so my sister-in-law says, well, why don't you go take this tax course? I'll even pay for you to go. You can do something and make a little bit of money until you decide where you want to go. And I decided I loved it. It's strange how life, if you look for opportunities and take opportunities, they will present themselves and they can completely change your life. And what I really found, the part of it I really found fascinating is being able to help people, especially small business people, because I specialize in business taxes and helping people dig out of the hole they've put themselves into through lack of knowledge or whatever the case. And I became an educator. I've been teaching people for over 2 decades now, small business people, how they need to run their business so they can keep more money in their pocket and pay less in taxes. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the number one expense to any business is the amount of taxes they're going to pay, especially when they're in a high tax state like California or New York. It's just
Hmm.
ridiculous. You can depending on your legal formation, you can pay up to 50% of your net profit just in taxes.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. So I've been teaching people how to use the laws, just like the big corporations do. You can use the same laws, how to use the laws to make themselves more profitable. And that's not always been an easy task. Some people listen to you, some people don't. And but I've enjoyed that journey, and it's brought to me where I'm at now.
Wow. That is an extensive history. And I just feel like I can relate because I actually did go to school to be a teacher. And I know how you feel about student teaching, but I did make it 1 year. I taught high school mathematics for a year and then the economy tanked, but it was also just like not for me. So I love doing what I do too, educating business owners and helping them do what they do better, right? And that's why we're here. So I love that you're doing that. So what's your favorite part about what you do?
A lot of people have said to me, well, they think of taxes as just accounting, you know, and they asked me if I'm a bookkeeper or a CPA, and I says I couldn't think of anything more boring in my life than being a bookkeeper, accountant, or CPA. Uh, just dealing with numbers, and they don't understand. It says the thing about tax, the tax part of it is it's a game.
Hmm.
How do I use the IRS rules to help my clients beat the IRS? And when I can do that, it's awesome. For instance, a couple of years ago, I had a new client come in. She had started a home chef business, and she must be a good chef because the first year she made $100,000 net profit.
Wow.
And she wasn't structured properly, and the way she was structured, she would have owed $6,000 in taxes. But she came to me early enough in the year that I could use some of the IRS rules, and we got her restructured in time. And instead of a $6,000 owing, her and her husband got a $2,000 refund.
Well, that's a big difference.
And when I can do things like that, it's just whoa. It's that's what I get off on is teaching people how to do that and help them navigate those things. That's what I really, really enjoy.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I feel like I need to hire you so I don't have to pay as much in taxes. Plug for me later.
Yeah, the opposite's true too. I had another gentleman that his friend asked him if he'd like to go sell energy contracts. I didn't know there was any such thing as energy contracts, but he was very successful at it, made $250,000 first year.
Wow.
Came into me, he had no business. He had no legal structure whatsoever. He had no bookkeeping system. He didn't keep track of his mileage, even though he traveled around a three state area. And I said, "You're going to be audited because you don't run $250,000 through a Schedule C sole proprietorship. You just don't do it."
Hmm.
But he wouldn't listen to me. I told him, "This is what you need to do. This is how you need to change things and everything else." And he came back to me the next year. He'd done one thing I told him. He stopped commingling his funds and he opened a business bank account. I said,
Hooray.
you're gonna be audited again. We put together as much as I could based on what he gave me. And sure enough, in the next year, he got the audit letters. And then he got a second audit letter. And he finally decided he better listen to me and went out and did what I said. And he was very good at it. I lost him as a client because I taught him so well. He went out and opened a second business, structured it properly, and then hired somebody to take care of the whole thing. As far
Hmm.
as finances goes, he got a CPA, which is great, and I don't mind that. I mean, I got him started on the right foot. It's a shame that he had to lose thousands upon thousands of dollars in taxes to learn the lesson. But some people will listen to you, and some people will not. But at the same time, I love seeing people succeed.
Well, I love that. So obviously he wasn't listening to you. and that was a mistake, whatever he did. So I want to know what is some of the biggest mistakes you've seen people make in their businesses.
Well, there's the biggest mistake is people that are on the road and not keeping proper mileage logs. And the
Mm,
IRS is really cracking down on this. Now, a lot of people, when they first out, they say, well, mileage log, they've heard the term, but they have no idea what that means. And basically, what the IRS wants to see is they want justification that the miles that you're claiming were used for business.
makes
So they
sense.
want to see a day by day breakdown of what you did. Otherwise, the day, the business purpose, and the miles that you drove for that business purpose. And they want to see that. And so, and to back that up, you should also keep things like, well, when you have oil changes, they write down your odometer
Hmm.
readings on the receipts. So you keep those type of things for backup. So you can prove that, okay, if you had 6 months, you have them every 6 months or whatever, if you're on the road a lot, you can see the number of miles you rode, and that kind of matches what you had in your mileage log, and the IRS is happy. Otherwise, they could just disallow the entire thing. They've really gotten a lot more letters during the last 18 months um, on that, and people asking for proof of those type of things, and they're disallowing them. And that's one of the biggest deductions you can have on your returns is the mileage log. The other thing that one of the other big things is the depreciation laws, and nobody understands depreciation laws. You know,
I'm not
depreciation.
surprised.
Yeah, and this is how the big corporations get by not paying a lot in taxes sometimes because they use the depreciation laws. Depreciation laws say, for instance, if you buy equipment that has a lifespan of more than 1 year, like a computer, you have to write the cost off over so many years. Like a computer is a 5 year property, you write it off over 5 years. Office furniture is a 7 year property, you write it off for 7 years. So, but there's one thing about tax laws. For every tax laws, there's an exception to the tax law.
Hmm.
So you can take advanced depreciation and write the whole thing off this year if you need more, or you can shove more of it off into a future year if you're going to need it then. Because so for me to do my job properly, I actually have to sit down and I have to interview people and say, okay, what's your projections for not only this year, but for next year, for the next 5 years? Where are you headed? So that I know how to have this conversation about you, about how much we should deduct this year, how much should we put forward to next year? Does it has to be forward 1 year, or does it has to be pushed forward 5 years? And what the case? And this is exactly what the big boys do. They had you because I mean, of course, they're at larger scale because they're buying manufacturing plants. So how do I deduct this cost of this manufacturing plant? And they have 5 year plans. And those 5 year plans include things like depreciation. And these are the other things that I work with people. For you to know, for you to be, I always one of the things that I teach people is how to hire somebody. Because as your business grows, you're going to want an accountant on your team. You're going to want a tax preparer on your team. But you need to be, it's amazing how many people I talk to that they'll just go out and, well, Uncle Joe said this person's a good person, and so I'm going to hire them without interviewing them. They don't
Really?
interview them. They just say, oh, here's something good about somebody and that. And they don't hear it. And I know this because I have a lot of CPAs and everything that retire, and I inherit them and correct the mistakes that are made. So I tell people, if you're going to hire a CPA, by all means hire a CPA. But if it's one that says drop your stuff off and I'll call you when it's ready, run the other way because they don't care about your business. You know,
Hmm.
if you're going to hire your CPA to also do your taxes, ask them, well, how many continuing education hours each year do you take in tax updates? Because see, a lot of people think an accountant or CPA is an expert in taxes, and that couldn't be anything further from the truth. I mean, they have to take some basic tax courses to get their initial CPA certification. They don't have to take another tax course the rest of their lives.
Interesting.
They have to take so many. It's just like being an enrolled agent, an IRS enrolled agent, which is like a PhD in the tax world. I have to take at least 25 hours a year in continuing education classes,
Hmm.
including all the tax updates and so forth. And there's a lot of electives. Of course, I take most of mine in business. But these are the things you need and I tell people, well, if you've got a plumbing company and you're going to hire a plumber, would you sit down and interview them?
Yes.
Yes. And it's the same thing. Anybody that you bring into your team to handle your money, you need to be interviewing them. And unfortunately, this doesn't go on. This doesn't happen very often. It's just like if for me to do a good job for somebody, whether it's at the tax desk or whether it's as a consultant, because I do consulting also, um, I have to learn their business. you know so I have a paint business or landscape business or whatever the business that comes to me. I have to learn how they operate and what their plans are, and I actually have to become almost part of their business so that I can do the best job possible. And if somebody's not willing to do that and sit down with you, then you need to look someplace else. So who's ever doing your taxes, you should be meeting with twice a year, once in about at least by February for the prior year, and probably again in October, November, so that if there's changes need to be made by the end of the year, they can be made. They could save you some money, and people aren't doing that either. So
Hmm.
these are the things people need to learn and to think about if they really, really, really want to be successful businesses. This is how successful businesses run.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, you want someone to be a partner with you, right? Not just hand over your stuff and hope they do a good job and maybe never hear from it again, which I can see how some people like that too, though. Like, I just don't want to deal with it, or I don't want to learn about it or know anything about it. But it's important to understand a little bit about what's happening in your business, right? And what other people are doing for you.
Oh, absolutely. And just the thing is, I mean, like I go back to the thing about the plumber, if you didn't know plumbing yourself, how would you be able to interview to find if somebody is a good one or not? And the same thing goes when you're dealing with your finances. How can you interview and hire somebody that's going to do a good job for you unless you know the basics yourself? And
Right.
so this is why I stress so much the education part of this entire process, because there's really three pillars that every business sits on. The first one is the legal formation, everywhere from a sole proprietorship to a C corporation. The
Mm-hmm.
second is how do you organize your paperwork so that whether you're doing it or you're working with somebody else, that you have the data to do the best job for you, to save the most money for you, to make your net profit the highest. And the third part is taxes, because taxes is such a major part expense to the business. You want them to make as low as possible. I mean, we can do better things with our money than the government, that's for sure. So I like to help people keep as much as their pocket as possible. But you have to know these three. These are the three pillars that I essentially teach in all of my classes. And if you know them, every decision you make in your business is going to affect one of those three things.
Hmm.
You know, and all this information is out there. What I try to do is to show how those three things interconnect with each other, and changing one changes the other. And how that's why I call it the three pillars. So underneath every business, because all three of them, you've got it. They're interconnected. And if you know them, and if you base your business decisions on them, you're going to have a much more solid business and a better chance of success.
Yeah. Well, I know forming my business, it's hard to find information's out there, right? But it's hard to find what's the right information, what's the right thing for me. I know so many conversations are like, well, someone told me I should just be an S corp. It's like you can't just do things just because someone told you to do it. So finding the right information is a challenge. I think in general, it just knowing what's out there is just so abundant. And then making sure that you're doing the right thing. I think it's helpful to talk to somebody because you really don't know. There are implications, right? If you become an S corp, you have to take you have to pay yourself via payroll. Not everybody realizes that. So how you set yourself up right at the very start impacts everything you do right from the get-go.
It absolutely does. And most people when they're starting out business, especially the first time, will start as a sole proprietor and do a Schedule C with their 1040, and that's fine. That's good for exploring business concepts. But eventually, you're going to look at other formats like an S corporation. But there's a time to transfer to that because there's an overhead cost to that, and you have to make sure that you're making enough money to absorb the overhead cost of that to make it worthwhile. So, these are the things that need to be discussed also. And there's some people that they ought to do a C corp. There's some people that start businesses just for the purpose of selling them and
Yeah.
and walking away with the money. In that case, then you need to be looking at C corporations because it's a messy to sell the other types. Whether a C corporation just sell the business, when you have a S corporation or partnership, you have to sell the individual parts of it individually, and it is a lot harder to do. So those things have to be considered. There's so many things that have to be considered. But if you educate yourself and you know the pros and cons of each and how they work together, you can make much more intelligent decisions and have a greater chance of success.
Yeah. I agree completely. And I think there are challenges that people have that are just like it's you start a business because you're good at something, right? Like I have a passion for if I'm a painter painting and I'm going to start this painting business and like all of this stuff we're talking about today is not something that I'm good at or that I know about. And then either you don't really know what to do or you just fly by the seat of your pants and then um things can happen down the line, right? So I'd love to hear like what's what's something significant that someone's experienced that you've seen because of one of your three pillars they've set up incorrectly that's cost them in the long run.
Wow. The biggest part that most people have is the organizing the paperwork part. Uh, Everything from throwing everything to a box. I've had people say, well, my bank statements is my bookkeeping system, or my credit card statements is my bookkeeping system. And I says, no, it's not. First of all, it's not going to tell you what your net profit is. A proper bookkeeping system is going to tell you what your net profit to year to date is at any given time. You know, that's one thing. The other thing is the reason you can't keep things like, you know, if you go to Walmart and buy something and just and charge, put it on your debit card or whatever, it's going to have a statement. You're going to have a Walmart charge on your statement. What's
Right.
to prove that's a business expense? And this is the way the IRS looks at things. What's to prove that's a business expense? You could buy something personal and claim it's business. So you have to keep the receipts also, whether you keep them in paper form, whether you scan them. I have a paperless office. I scan everything. And it goes in there. I'll probably never need it, but if I do it, all I have to do is hit the print button and I have proof that this was a business expense. There's just little things like that that people don't take in consideration. They don't want to do the work of all this paperwork. People hate paperwork. That's the thing. The number one complaint is people hate paperwork. And that's the number one thing that I have the biggest problem getting people to do properly. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years working with somebody before they'll finally, at the end of the year, bring me exactly what I need to know, how I need it. And because, I'm busy building my business. I don't have time to do paperwork. And yet you're not going to have a business if you don't do paperwork. So it's one or the other.
Yeah, well, just because your bank statement says you have money in the bank doesn't mean your business has money in the bank. I
Yeah,
like to
that's
say that.
very true.
Yes. And I also feel like there's so many tools out there today that can help you get organized. And receipt capture, just take a picture of it on your phone and then it's there. If you just have to invest in it. And like you said, take the time to learn it. But I think from your perspective, it's got to save people lots of time and money coming prepared with everything that they need and everything's organized up front versus being like, well, here's my shoebox. Now you would have to take, or whoever have to take hours working through all their stuff where it could just be like nicely put together.
Exactly, exactly. And it's easier for me to analyze where the business is at and if they're doing anything right or wrong when it is organized. Um, that makes a big difference too. You can only help people to the extent they want to be helped. That's the other thing that I've learned, and and that's part of it. I can teach them, but if they don't do it, it's to their detriment, and it's a shame to see those things. But that's the way life is.
I feel like I said that a lot as a teacher, but I agree with you in the business world. I can bring you to the lake to drink, but I can't force you to drink the water
Yep.
itself. Well, this has been a great conversation. I would love to know for people new, this might be a new topic or they feel like they need to explore further. What's one thing that you would love someone to take away from this conversation today?
Educate yourself. You know, I know you probably don't want, you're busy doing whatever you're doing, but you need to educate yourself. And more than anything, I think the biggest things you can do, number one, there's a lot of good books out there. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I recommend to anybody that's in business needs to read that book 3 times. And find yourself a mentor. You
Hmm.
know, that's one of the biggest things you can do is find yourself a mentor, somebody that's been around the block a few times and that's learned, that made the mistakes and is willing to sit down and talk to you. Whether it's a consultant, whether it's just somebody you've met at a business meeting who's willing to mentor you, whatever the case may be, don't be a lone wolf because you're going to make mistakes you could have avoided uh, by getting advice, by learning. I think that's probably the number one thing that people really need to do.
I agree 100%. And being a business owner can be really lonely, especially if you're married, your spouse isn't your business owner, it's not someone you can always go to. You need somebody or a group of people to go to and you got to find those people. So I agree with that. And I my takeaway I think is you have to learn about what you're doing to even have conversations with other people or hire other people. It's really important to at least get the basics understood so it helps you run your business better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is great. If people want to learn more about you or connect with you or hire you because they want to save some money in general, where can they find you?
Well, I've tried to create programs from everybody for all kinds of businesses, from the person that just needs a few $100s to make the budget this month. And there's a lot of us out there, all the way up to people that are in the corporate world. But I've consulted everything on my corporate website, which is seagulltechnologies.com. It's seagull spelled like the bird, there's a whole story to that too. But seagulltechnologies.com. And I have free courses out there. I have links to consulting. I have links to college level courses on the 3 pillars that I've put together. It's taken me a lot of years to put those together, but I finally consolidated them. And there's 7 hours worth of video on that thing alone that
Wow.
I've put together. Yeah, it's a college level course. These are the things that the kids in college tell me they don't teach there. So, and so if you go to, and there's even there's a link for a free report. If you like more information about the 3 pillars that I've been talking about, I have a free report there that you can download also. So I invite everybody to go over and take a look and see if there's anything there that they can use for themselves.
Well, that's awesome. And I know before we hopped on this episode, you were talking about your YouTube channel too, right? So they can find you on YouTube and
I do. I have a link right there on the front page to that also.
yes, learn something on YouTube right after you watch this, of course. So that's awesome. I will put that information in the show notes as well if anybody wants to find you. As for me, if you're looking to find more about what I do, or looking to help to generate some more cash in your business, you can find me at newlightfs.com. That's our website, and there's some free resources out there as well. But that's it for this episode of Getting to the Bottom Line. I just want to say thank you again, Roger, for coming on the show and speaking with me today.
I really enjoyed it.
Yes, me too. I hope you all join me for the next episode, and you have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.